Hello, everyone. I'm very delighted to be among you here today. And today I'm going to talk to you about a very important issue which sparked much controversy after the 2011 tumultuous events of the so-called Arab Spring. Well, it is the issue of religious freedom in Morocco, which markedly came to prominence and became a local and Western media concern, culminating into rounds of debates over whether the 2011 large public demonstrations would lead to a radical change and would determine future prospects of religious and non-religious minorities, or they merely contributed to a reshuffle in Moroccan politics. So in this respect, the investigation of the official discourse, okay, I'm sorry. The investigation of the official discourse on religious minorities in Morocco in light of the 2011 Constitution and the Marrakesh Declaration is likely to maximize spaces of contesting the state's semi-authoritarian, I quote Ottawa 2013, semi-authoritarian strategies of controlling the unequal inclusion of what I call subaltern religious and non-religious minorities, as well as renegotiating the notion of equal citizenship. In this respect, my presentation seeks to re-problematize the religious majority-minority dialectics in Morocco as a predominantly Muslim country where Sunni Malikite Islam is a source of political legitimacy and the basis of the state's identity. It also endeavors to show how the reforms carried out by the government to institutionalize the religious field and modernize it are nothing but an instrument of political power used to both regulate public religion among Moroccan Muslims and determine its legitimate actors while restraining the religious freedom of other individuals. So against the backdrop of systematic coercion and bias against Moroccan religious minorities, this paper is devoted to demonstrating the disruptive techniques of digital disobedience, or as Fraser 1990 puts it, counter-publics deployed by religious subaltern actors in what Gramsci 1971 labels ongoing wars of position and maneuver to negotiate and challenge hegemonic discourses, thereby unveiling their own narratives of dissidence, social injustice, and religious, as well as political freedom. Now, throughout my presentation, we will raise the following question. Does religious freedom exist in Morocco? What strategies has the state adopted to manage the religious field? What kind of significant reforms has the state carried out to instigate democracy and guarantee freedom of thought and religion? And what is the meaning of equal citizenship under the 2011 Constitution and the Marrakesh Declaration? Is the Marrakesh Declaration a Muslim call for protecting religious minorities or a call for freedom of religion? And last but not least, what role has social media played in mobilizing religious groups and human rights activists? Now, for many centuries, Morocco has been primarily a Muslim society in which religion plays an instrumental role in generating and reinforcing ideological force for politics, cultural identity, and nationalist consciousness. Building on the traditional religious school of Malikism, which draws from Sunni moderate Islam, the state has managed to maintain control over the political field and has been able to maneuver the potential threat of political Islam and ward off the perils of religious extremism. In fact, religion has been plainly interwoven with politics, since Article 6 of the Constitution makes it clear that, I quote, Islam shall be the state religion, end of quote, and Article 19 represents the king as commander of the faithful, or Amir al-Mu'minin in Arabic, who, I quote, shall be the supreme representative of the nation and the symbol of the unity thereof, end of quote. Hence, the instrumentalization of Islam has been an integral component of monarchical political power and religious policy. Interestingly enough, the official discourse about Moroccan religious tolerance and cultural diversity has been framed and controlled by the state. On several occasions, the Minister of Endowment and Islamic Affairs, Ahmed Tawfiq, has conveyed royal messages in which he pointed out that Morocco has been historically, I quote, an outstanding model in the way it has embraced multiple civilizations and faiths together in its soil, where coexistence, peace, and tolerance prevailed among Jews, Christians, and Muslims in urban and rural areas, end of quote. Yet, while the Moroccan state has recognized the freedom of religion for Jewish people and foreign Christians, the rest of Moroccan religious minorities, namely Christians, Shiites, and Baha'is, or even non-religious actors, according to the 2018, 2019, and 2020 State Department International Religious Freedom Reports, have been persecuted, pressured by the authorities to renounce their faiths, and have had nowhere to practice their beliefs. According to the aforementioned reports, Moroccan Christians, Baha'is, and Shiites suffer from discrimination as they are considered as minorities in a country where 99% of the population is composed of Sunni Muslims. In the wake of the large public demonstrations in Morocco, which were basically inspired by the Arab Spring, and following a 2011 constitutional referendum, the people approved of a new constitution which demonstrated the monarch's relinquishing of some of his legislative powers, recognized Morocco's cultural diversity, and promoted new civil rights and individual liberties. Yet, although the Moroccan constitution guarantees freedom of thought, expression, and assembly, and the free exercise of belief to everyone, there still exists a law that discriminates against non-Muslims. For instance, Article 220 of Morocco's Penal Code prohibits proselytizing and the dissemination of Christian religious materials. Such acts are punishable by 6 months to 3 years imprisonment and a fine of $21 to $53. Any attempt to evangelize Moroccans is therefore considered as a threat to the emirate of the faithful, which represents the religious legitimacy and political power of Morocco's constitutional monarchy. This breach of religious liberty, in fact, remains in total contradiction with the human rights principles of adopting a religion on the basis of a person's free decision. Indeed, the controversy over religious freedom in Morocco once again emerged after the government's adoption of the 2011 new constitution. Human rights organizations and local Christian leaders in this respect reported that in March 2016, several Moroccan Christians were detained and questions about their beliefs and contacts with other Christians, and some of them were even forced to abandon their faith. Although the latter filed a complaint to the Ministry of Justice about their detention and interrogation, the authorities took no initiative in opening an investigation. The 2016 International Religious Freedom Report also indicates that the local Christians are not the only religious minority that faces persecution in Morocco. So in May 2016, for example, a Moroccan Shia or Shiite was arrested for, I quote, alleged financial improprieties, end of quote, and was later sentenced to 1 year in prison. Yet some Shia officials later confirmed that he was detained for his religious orientation and his attempt, I quote, to register an association affiliated with Shia leaders and not for his financial misconduct, end of quote. In the same vein, while the government continued to allow foreign resident churches to register with the Ministry of Interior officials, local Shia and Baha'is could not form association under which they can operate officially. Moroccan Baha'is and Christian converts, on the other hand, continued to report government rejection of their registration requests, which led them to refrain from public worship and meet discreetly in members' homes. So as can be seen from the following graph by Okay, so as can be seen from the following graph by Varieties of Democracy Program, VDEM, from 2019 until 2021, Morocco had a very low rating of freedom of religion, which was approximately estimated at around 0.62. This means that Moroccans' freedom of religion was not really respected by authorities. It was even sanctioned by the law. So despite their exposure to daily harassment and pressure by the state, Moroccan Shiites, Baha'is, and Christians never gave up their quest for recognition as Moroccan citizens who are supposed to enjoy equal political and civil rights. It is this concept of equal citizenship that I shall deal with next under Morocco's post-2011 religious reforms and in light of the Marrakesh Declaration. Well, it has been already considered that the link between politics and religion in Morocco is framed by the state's religion dominance. So the state's semi-authoritarian strategy of control over the religious field was launched after the May 2003 terrorist attacks in Casablanca. A panoply of security measures in this respect were adopted by the Moroccan government to fight extremism and promote a moderate version of Islam, which advocates peace and religious tolerance. Yet the question that should be addressed here is, can religious tolerance and moderation, as associated with Moroccan Islam, be applicable in a context where tolerance does not insinuate equality of rights of those who are either Moroccan Christians, Shia, atheists, or even those who would like to convert to another religion? In an attempt to modernize the religious discourse, the state undertook a number of reforms which can be better perceived as, according to Maghraoui 2019, I quote, as part of a process of restructuring than as part of a significant theological breakthrough that has the potential for the secularization of the state institution, end of quote. The first step in reforming the religious field then included an updating of the Ministry of Islamic Affairs religious programs. The latter were revamped by the state in April 2004 in an attempt to structuralize religious education and have monopoly over the religious discourse in mosques through the use of modern telecommunication, the training of the murshidat, or female religious guides, and young imams under the supervision of religious scholars, the creation of Council for Moroccan Abroad, in addition to the promotion of Sufism as an integral part of Moroccan Islam that would effectively counter Wahhabism and militant Islam. Although Sufism has been revived in Moroccan public sphere as part of a religiosity that promotes interfaith dialogue, peace, and tolerance through the organization of spiritual festivals, it still remains intertwined with Sharifian politics. In the aftermath of 2011 constitutional reforms, which were essentially cosmetic, the state continued its long-established policy of control over the religious field by training more imams and female spiritual guides, and by inaugurating Mohamed VI Foundation for African Islamic Scholars in Fez in an effort to safeguard the image of a moderate Sunni Malikite Islam in West Africa. Another initiative which came as a response to the persecution against ethnic and religious minorities in Muslim-majority contexts by violent extremist groups associated with Daesh or so-called ISIS was the January 2016 Marrakesh Conference on the rights of religious minorities in predominantly Muslim-majority communities. The conference was organized jointly by the Ministry of Endowment and Islamic Affairs in the Kingdom of Morocco and the Forum for Promoting Peace in Muslim Societies under the patronage of King Mohammed VI. Hundreds of scholars, religious clergy, and representing a broad range of religions and schools of thought within Islam attended the conference, which culminated in the drafting of the Marrakesh Declaration. Among the declaration's proposals was the development of constitutional laws grounded on the historic Charter of the Medina, a formal contractual citizenship that was formed by Prophet Muhammad in the 7th century to ensure the equal treatment of all in the multi-religious society of Medina. Led by the religious scholar Sheikh Abdullah bin Meyer and affirmed by 42 governments, including Morocco, the declaration stressed the need for the urgent cooperation among various segments of Muslim majority societies to protect rights based on a legal framework for equal citizenship. This framework, bin Meyer argues, is in harmony with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. At this juncture, the declaration raises very important questions. For example, is the declaration a call for religious freedom or just a declaration on religious minorities? If religious freedom is understood as the right of the individual to criticize religion, convert to another religion, or become non-religious, then these rights are not part of the Marrakesh Declaration. So as has been mentioned earlier, the next slide, please. Many Moroccan Christians, as can be seen from the following slide, Baha'is and Shiites are still forced to practice their religion in secrecy, so they meet at homes secretly, and those who do not practice any religion are persecuted and discriminated against, and are treated as traitors to their faith and nation. It might be therefore appropriate to mention that the concept of equal citizenship, or what has been referred to in the declaration as a contractual citizenship, can hardly be concretized in Muslim majority contexts where local religious minorities continue to face legally sanctioned discrimination. The initiative to implement the legal framework of the Marrakesh Declaration can therefore be viewed as ambiguous, utopian, and self-congratulatory, since it only tries to protect an idealistic image of coexistence, tolerance, and respect for diversity with no political will to materialize it. Such kinds of initiatives, according to Ottawa 2013, are common in semi-authoritarian states, which are, I quote him, ambiguous systems that combine rhetorical acceptance of liberal democracy, the existence of some formal democratic institutions, and respect for a limited sphere of civil and political liberties with essentially illiberal or even authoritarian traits, end of quote. In response to the systematic marginalization, persecution, and coercion against religious minorities in Morocco, a number of Moroccan Christian activists, namely Brother Rashid, a host of an evangelical Christian TV program, and a few other local Christians created YouTube channels and appeared in programs on the independent digital press Hespress and on Med National Radio in an attempt to enable their visibility and stand up for their full rights as Christian citizens. Such civil rights include freedom of worship, celebration of civil marriages, establishment of and operation of cemeteries, and being able to use biblical names for children, to name but a few, end of quote. So no doubt, of course, social media over the past few years has emerged as a subliminal terrain, which has definitely served as a cyber activism tool for mobilization, communication, and coordination, either before or after the Arab uprisings. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube in particular have reinvented a high-tech public sphere where the semi-authoritarian state attempt to control and orient the religiosity of Moroccans is contested and challenged. Such modernized semi-authoritarianism, Ottawa further explains, I quote, leave enough political space for organizations of civil society to form, for an independent press to function to some extent, and for some political debate to take place. A few months after the Marrakesh Declaration was launched, the first videos on the YouTube channel Moroccan and Christian, Maghribi Masihi, sparked much controversy and created even more divided reactions among Moroccan citizens. Such videos display Moroccan men and women sharing their stories, as can be seen from the following slide as well. And this is Iman, she's a Moroccan Christian, who shared her story in a relatable Moroccan Arabic, recounting the various stigmas that come along with the process. Their testimonies also show their discontent with governmental harassment and continuous societal and familial pressure. Using YouTube as an open democratic virtual platform, the Christian activists not only challenge state monopoly over information in the religious field, but they also heighten societal and religious awareness by focusing on national unity and identity. In this sense, the new technologies, as emphasized by Lynch, 2013, are used as a tactful tool, I quote, to shift the overall control of the public sphere from state-controlled media to social media, end of quote. In the same vein, Dale F. Eckelman, 2003, argues that access to new technologies has, I quote, eroded the ability of authorities to censor and repress, to project an uncontested central message defining political and religious issues for large numbers of people. Censors may still restrict what is said in the mainstream press and broadcast media, but these media have lost the exclusivity they once had. The availability of alternative media have irrevocably altered how authoritative discourse is read and heard. Clearly, social media provide a suitable environment for Moroccan religious minorities to mobilize, voice their dissent, and demand recognition as individuals who have their capacity to achieve their religious as well as social and political rights. Such digital platforms therefore become a space of expression that bolster the roles of misrepresented religious groups in shaping new performances of citizenship outside of normative models of citizenship rights and spaces of civic engagement. In this regard, acts of citizenship, to quote John's 2014, are suggestive of performances that bypass broader institutional patterns to construct new political subjectivities that are oriented toward social justice. As a conclusion, and I'm coming to an end, the state official rhetoric about religious liberty, tolerance, and coexistence might be plausible and effective if it is conceived in a way that frees citizens from the state doctrinal dogmatism as well as political obstacles. In order to go beyond such schizophrenic cohabitation between the state desire to tolerate religious minorities and its semi-authoritarian tendencies of controlling their inclusion, more philosophical, intellectual engagement is needed, along with an updated understanding of religion which goes beyond structural ideological barriers and which conforms to the exigencies of political modernity and democratic political institutions. And thank you so much. I hope I have not been so long.
Admirable. Thank you very much. Thank you.